Welcome to Hope Talks podcast with Grayson Willis and Pastor Margaret Michael, where you'll hear inspiring stories that are filled with hope and good news in Jesus Christ. You can also search for our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and TuneIn. We would love your feedback and invite you to take a short, anonymous survey. You can find the link to the survey in the show notes.
Welcome to today's broadcast of Hope Talks. I'm Pastor Margaret Michael.
And I'm Grayson Willis, and we'd like to say Happy Father's Day to the fathers listening. I'd like to say Happy Father's Day to my dad. I appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure. Happy Father's Day. My dad is not listening, but he will hear that from me at some point today. Today our guest is Kevin Skellett, and Kevin is on the pastoral staff at Southside Church of the Nazarene and has been a part of Celebrate Recovery and has been a mentor to me in that area, and I've learned a lot from you, Kevin. And today we just want to hear a little bit about your story and about how God is using you and the story of your life to help others. And so welcome. Thanks for being here with us today.
Well, I certainly appreciate the invitation to be on today, and I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we will start out today. If you just want to share a little bit with us about where you grew up, and we'll just start with a little bit of your story so we can get a little bit of context for how you grew up. I don't know if you grew up in the church or when that became a part of your life.
Yep. Yes, I grew up in upstate New York, just outside of Binghamton, if anyone knows where that is. We're just across the Pennsylvania border, about the middle of the state or so. And I did grow up going to church. I grew up in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. My mother was mostly Ukrainian, and her parents had come from Ukraine to the United States. So it was more of a liturgical-centered church, but had all the big icons and things that you maybe have seen. And we had the big onion-type domes on top of the church and everything. But it was always a beautiful church. I didn't always understand because I didn't know Ukrainian, and only once a month did they have it in English. So I learned a lot of the Ukrainian words. Wasn't sure exactly what I was saying, but I certainly could say them. I served as an altar boy growing up in that church, and was in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church up till I went to college, I guess, right around 21 or so, or 21, something like that.
Does anything in particular stick out from going to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? You mentioned you served as an altar boy, but any other things, maybe experiences that are foundational in your faith from those early years?
Oh yeah, our priest was just an awesome man of God. He was a very good teacher, and just serving under him was just an honor. Just to see the way that he conducted himself and the way he worked in different situations and things. I just learned a lot about who God is from him. He was a very good mentor in my life in those early years, and always respected him so much.
So you grew up there in the church, and you got a foundation, right? That foundation of faith was laid. You went on to college, and what did that journey look like?
Well, as I went to college, I went as an engineering degree in upstate New York at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So I spent the 4 years up there. Probably didn't attend church too much, even when I was home in the summer. As I graduated from college, that's when I met my first wife, and she was Catholic. And so I started attending the Catholic church with her. And that was going to be the next 20 years or so of my life. I'd be in the Catholic church. And so being in the Catholic church, that was kind of interesting for me as well. I did serve eventually in the Catholic church. That's where I started beginning to tithe, and served in the ministry of the Word. So I was one of the readers of the different gospel messages, or the whatever the passage was for the week. I would be one of the readers on occasion, and so that was good to be part of that team. It was also during that time that I came to surrender my life to Jesus. But it was not in the Catholic Church. I'd gotten in actually an Amway group, and they had conventions every now and then. I went away to one, and they were really talking about really getting into the Bible and just talking about different, how to handle money and different business things that are in the Bible. And then they got into talking a little bit more about our salvation and things. And so that kind of piqued an interest in me. When I graduated high school, I was valedictorian of our high school, and I was able to give a speech and all that kind of stuff. And my priest from the Ukrainian Orthodox Church gave me a Bible, and on the inside cover of the Bible, it was Psalm 143:10. Teach me to do your will, and he had just some, had that reference in there. And I never really read that Bible. It actually ended up getting in a box, and I probably sat in the attic for 13 years or so until I got saved. And then I pulled that Bible out, and that teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. That has become my life verse. I always want to have God teach me where to go, what to do, and try to follow him the best that I can. But it was on a Sunday morning, Labor Day weekend in 1992 that I got saved at the Richmond Coliseum at an Amway convention. They had a Sunday morning service, and they called for volunteers to come on down front. And I was way up in the top of the arena, and I just felt like something was pulling me up out of my seat, forcing me to go down onto the floor. And so finally I did. I went up, stood up, walked down all those stairs down to the floor of the arena, and the leader there led us in a prayer of salvation. And I can remember it like it was today. As I prayed that prayer of salvation, it felt like the weight of the world fell off my shoulders, and I just felt completely changed at that moment. And that was when I was 31 years old.
Okay.
And that's kind of when I went back to the Catholic Church and started getting involved and doing more. When I joined the ministry of the Word and tried to serve as much as I could.
How you mentioned that you were saved at the Richmond Coliseum, and you mentioned you were from upstate New York. So how did you end up in Richmond from New York?
Yeah, I was working for IBM up in New York, and after college, and I lived in Binghamton, and they're known for having like one of the lowest number of sunny days. I think they were behind Seattle or somewhere like that, in the number of sunny days that they actually have. So they're really low number of sunny days. So I was always looking to move south, just away from there. And IBM had a program that they were moving a lot of people to sales and marketing out of the plants. And I was a test engineer in the plant. So I volunteered to look into that thing. I wanted to go. I was both trying to get to North Carolina, but an opportunity came up in Richmond, Virginia. And so I came down here, and my wife and I looked around, and we really loved the area here. So we decided to move. So I moved from the plant environment to becoming a systems engineer with IBM here in Richmond. And I did that. Let's see, I think we moved here in 1987, and been here ever since. I've lived down here in Virginia a lot longer than I lived in New York State, so I'm hopefully a Virginian by now.
Yeah. So you and your wife had children?
Yes, we had two sons. My oldest son, Drew, he was born in 1987, and then my son, Mark, was born in 1990. And so we were raising them, and I happened to go into the Catholic Church, and I was getting more and more involved in the church, and she wasn't. And so over the years, we kind of slowly drifted apart, and we ended up getting a divorce in 2006. So we were down here together for almost 20 years, and the kids were in their teens by then when we ended up getting divorced. I'd worked for IBM until 2000, and so right around 2000, I guess it was. And then I left, went to another, it was like a .com company that I went to in they were headquartered in Northern Virginia, but they had an office here. And so when I had that job, that was a lot of travel. I was gone probably about 26, well, no, actually almost every week I was gone for at least a few days. I only had a few weeks where I wasn't gone traveling. So that took a big toll as well. So we didn't really have a chance to work on our marriage, and she ended up finding someone else during that travel time and everything. So it was, that was just kind of the beginning of the end of our marriage.
Yeah.
And that was probably between 2000 and 2001. And then I switched jobs again in late 2001. And that was travel, not as much as the other job, but it was probably traveling half the time.
So at some point, you ended up at the Nazarene Church in Richmond, South Side. How did that come about?
Yeah, that was right along with this divorce. So, I guess from that aspect, that was one of the good things that came out of the divorce. One of the things I liked the Catholic Church and all, but that wasn't where I got saved, and it was more of a evangelical group that I was with where I got saved, and so I wanted to look for a different church. So I'd been in the Orthodox Church, I'd been in the Catholic Church, so I needed to try a Protestant church. So I was just looking around for different churches to attend because my wife was going to stay at the Catholic Church. And so my sons had come with their friends to Southside Nazarene Church for some events. And so I put that first on my list, and so my boys had some familiarity with it. And so I think it was in 2004. Well, we had separated in 2004. We were separated in the same house. So I moved out of our bedroom and moved upstairs with the boys. And I came to Southside Church for the very first time. And that was first on my list. I'd had a number of churches on my list that I was going to go and check out. But I came here, and I enjoyed the service and everything. And then the pastor's wife, Brenda Hancock, at the time, she was greeting people on the way out, and she stopped me and talked with me for a little while. Then she asked me a question and said, am I going to see you next week? And I told her, yes, you will see me next week. So I made that commitment to come back the following week, and haven't left since.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty powerful.
It's so important, I guess, to really engage in new people coming in, because, again, I had a different plan, but God kept me right here.
And Margaret mentioned this at the beginning, but you lead and help lead Celebrate Recovery there at Southside. How did you get involved with that ministry? Yeah.
So I, as I started coming to Southside Church, for the first year, I just kind of tried to stay as out of the light as possible. I just come on Sundays and leave. But then with the divorce and everything, I decided that I needed to get away for a weekend, and the men were having a retreat. So I didn't know anybody, but I signed up for the men's retreat, and we went out to the Nazarene campgrounds, I believe. And I spent the weekend out there and got to know a lot of the guys. And after the first night, we had they were playing basketball. And so I decided to go play. And one of the guys came up to me and started asking me some questions about how things were going. And I probably told him more than he wanted to hear about my divorce and all the other kind of stuff that was going on. But then he did something I didn't expect. It was very powerful. He called all the other guys over, and they had me sit down, and they all put their hands on me and prayed for me. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that. That weekend was another life-changing weekend. That's when I really surrendered to God and just gave it all to Him. When I came back from that weekend, I got involved in small groups, got into a men's accountability group. And then a year later, I'm leading the men's ministry. And so I was leading that. And I got involved with a divorce care group that we had here. And soon the person who was leading that was going to give that up. And so I was leading the divorce care ministry and the men's ministry. And then our executive pastor at the time, he had bought the starter kit for Celebrate Recovery, I think in 1992. And he was looking for someone to start it. And so I think it was about 2009 or so where he came to me and he gave me this box and he said, think about doing this ministry. And so I read through the information. And at the time I said, this is too big for me. There's too many elements. I don't know how to do all this stuff. So I gave him the box back and told him, no, I don't think this is for me. And then it was just after that I felt God call me into ministry. So I started taking classes in Nazarene Bible College and started working towards my first ministry license. And they were starting a Saturday night service at the time as well. So I got involved in helping start that service. I ended up being the the service minister for that service. And so I got a lot of help on how to start up a service, how to get volunteers to start up a service, and to do all the things about, getting a service. That was a piece that I really didn't understand for Celebrate Recovery. And about 6 months into that Saturday night service that I was helping lead, God said, "Okay, now I've taught you everything you need to know about starting a service. Now go start Celebrate Recovery." And so I went back to our executive pastor and got the kit back and told him that I'm going to go ahead and start this, but I'm probably going to have to come off of the Saturday night leadership when I do. And so I started getting ready for planning for Celebrate Recovery, and we started that up in 2011 in September. But that was a great journey. That's probably been one of the most favorite ministries that I've been a part of, just seeing all the lives being changed there at Celebrate Recovery. It's just it's a very powerful ministry. We've had thousands of people come through our doors over the last 12 years, and a lot of them have stayed, and a lot of them had really dug in and changed their lives. I've had a number of people get called into ministry after they went through Celebrate Recovery and had their lives changed, and a lot of them are serving in other areas of this church or whatever church they were attending at the time. So it's just been this has been a very powerful ministry to lead and to watch. And to, at one time, I became a state representative for Celebrate Recovery as well. So I was helping other churches in the area start up their Celebrate Recoveries, and I was helping other churches around in the Nazarene district as well to start Celebrate Recoveries. And that's where I was able to help Margaret with the Harrisonburg one.
I will never forget when you came and spent the day with our pastors, and that was the day that I knew this was something we definitely needed to move forward with. And you were just that ministry that day. In that short time, I realized that this is something that I want for other people, but I think I need it. I think that this is something that's going to help me heal, and it has been very transformative for me. I've been through the program. I've been through step study, I think 5 or 6 times. And every time God shows me something new that he can work on and help me to be transformed in that area of my life. And so it is a ministry that I believe in, and it's a ministry that you have certainly helped a lot of people find healing, not just at Southside, but like you said, at other churches in the Nazarene Church and outside other churches throughout the state. So thank you.
Every time I want to leave Celebrate Recovery and put it in someone else's hands, God shows me that I need it more than I think.
True.
And so it's
true.
I'd worked my way out of the ministry leader role for a while, and called myself the Celebrate Recovery pastor, but now I'm back in the ministry leader role and trying to help rebuild and keep things going here.
Yeah, well, through the pandemic, the pandemic was not real kind in a lot of ways, but for Celebrate Recovery, I think that was just, and it's so needed today more than ever. So thank you for not giving up on it and continuing. You have impacted a lot of lives and helped through Celebrate Recovery. But there's another ministry that you have that's near and dear to your heart. And if you would want to take just a little bit and share your story in relation to that ministry, I think that would be something that could be very helpful to our people to hear.
Yeah. At that same time, when I was planning for Celebrate Recovery to start, and I was in classes going for my, I was actually in a required class for my district licensing, for the first district licensing. Mm-hmm. I had an event happen that I hope no one else who hears this experiences, but I know that there probably will be. I got a phone call on May 18th, 2011, 8:30 in the morning. It was a police detective asking if he could come and speak with me. I asked him what it's about, and at first he said, we can talk about it when they arrive. And I said, did I do something wrong? And he said, well, it's in reference to your son, Mark. And I said, he'll be over it a little bit, and they hung up. So I was trying to figure out exactly what was going on. So I called Mark's phone to see what was going on, but it went directly to his message. So I sat down and tried to think about this situation, about why the police called. If Mark was in an accident or if he was hurt, they would have told me where he was or what hospital he was going to. I figured if Mark was arrested, Mark would be calling and not the police. But then, the only other thing I could think of I didn't really like. That's when I sat down on my couch because 8:30 in the morning I was home by myself. My wife had already gone off to work. My oldest son Drew was off at work, and I just sat down, put my hands together, and prayed. And the first words that came out of my mouth were, "Father, my son is dead." And God was right there with me. And he came back and said in my head, he said, "My son died too. I know exactly how you feel." And that brought, some comfort and some peace. And then he said, "By the way, he's not your son." Just kind of paused there. And so that kind of confused me. And I was trying to figure that out when he said, "He's my son. I gave him to you." And the only thing I could think to say after that was, "Thank you, Father, for the time you gave me with Mark." So in that short conversation, God really showed me compassion, told me the truth about whose son Mark really is, and got me to be thankful, probably the worst moment of my life. And so I waited for the police to arrive, and they told me that Mark had taken his life. And so that could have thrown a wrench in what I did for Celebrate Recovery. It could have thrown a wrench in me getting my district licensing and everything. But I decided to go ahead and push through on both of those. I got through my class, and I got through, continued starting Celebrate Recovery, which was a really good thing. But in those days between finding out and then Mark's memorial service, God just kept putting words in my head and telling me I needed to speak at Mark's memorial service, which was something I didn't really want to do. But he kept on putting those words over and over. I didn't have to write anything down because they were just right there in my head. They kept on putting all these words and then putting them all together and exactly how to say it. I couldn't sleep at night because these words were going in my head. And then I guess when the day finally came, we had a Catholic priest speak. We had our lead pastor here at Southside. He spoke, and then I spoke. And the only thing I took up with me was just a small piece of paper that had a quote from, I think, the book Dune that Mark had handwritten. And it was a quote about fear and staring down your fear and actually just walking through your fear and just letting it pass by, and you turn around and there's actually nothing there. The fear is gone. And I used that in the talk that I did as a transition. As the first part, I really just talked about Mark and all the things that he loved and the things that he did. And these are all things that God had put in my head and remembered. And I got to the point where, talking about Mark and science fiction, he loved reading science fiction. And so I read the quote, and then I said, where fear is, there's no faith, but when fear is gone, that's where faith can be. And then I just turned that around and started talking about my faith there to all Mark's friends. Now, Mark was really more part of that, the outcast group. All his friends were there, all tatted up and all kinds of colors of hair and stuff, and piercings, all that. And I knew many of them as well. They were all good kids, but they all had stories themselves. And so I was talking about faith And then when I got to the end, I said, if any of Mark's friends ever see me out, just come on up and feel free to come up and tell me stories about Mark. And then I ended the service and prayed, and I started heading out the door to just get some fresh air and stuff. I turned around and I got a line of 30 kids want to talk to me and tell me stories about Mark. That was so powerful. If I didn't speak, if I didn't talk at the funeral, that would never have got those stories.
Yeah.
Story after story about how Mark showed up for them, how Mark helped them. Mark got them a refrigerator. Mark did all this. I was wondering where all my money went that I was giving to Mark. Then I found out where it all went to. But that was so powerful. And had I not continued to celebrate recovery, I wouldn't have had a safe place to talk about all my grief as we went through our step study groups trying to learn the process and get ready to launch our Celebrate Recovery. I was able to each week have a safe place to talk about what I was going through and work through my grief. And then with my district license, I was able to get that in, I think I got it in August, and then I was able to marry my son, Drew, in September. So all those different pieces and parts that all kind of work together for the good. So, and then from the loss of Mark, I launched a ministry here. It'll be 2 years on May 18th. It's called Love Never Ends, and it's for parents who've lost a child. It's really just a community of parents who've lost children ministering to other parents who've lost children. So we've got online groups available, got in-person groups available. I've got a lot of resources on our website, which is loveneverendsministry.org. And so we've been trying to grow that and do things there for now the last couple of years, because it was other parents who had lost children who really helped me during those first few months and years. They understood my pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I can't imagine what you've been through, but I see this desire, and God's given you the heart, not to only lean into Him and allow Him to minister to you. Even in the darkest moments of your life, you turn to Him, and He takes and makes beauty from ashes. Not that it makes it better, not that the pain goes away, but I know that God is allowing you to help others walk through that, and it's a community. It's not just one way. It's there's a blessing for everyone that's a part of that. And so thank you for just being willing to lean into those broken places in your own life and through Celebrate Recovery. I think about if you had not continued in that role in Celebrate Recovery, because you were the connection for me. I knew that you were a rep. I reached out to you about Celebrate Recovery, and I think about how that would have impacted all the people that have come through our Celebrate Recovery. And that number just adds up as you think about all the places that people are coming. And in that one moment, you could have said, I'm just going to stop and I'm going to walk away from ministry because I need to heal. But you didn't. And I'm just sitting here realizing that we are the recipients of that as well. So thank you for just trusting the Lord and doing the next thing.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you for joining us today and being willing to be vulnerable with us and to share about tough stuff, tragic stuff that has happened in your life. And it's just been great to have you today.
Well, I certainly appreciate you having me. And that's things that I do when we share the tough stuff. That helps other people share their tough stuff as well. And that's where healing begins. So.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you for listening to today's broadcast of Hope Talks. We pray that as you've heard us talk with Kevin Skellett today, that it truly has been a half hour of hope for your life. May God bless.
Hope Talks is sponsored by Church of the Nazarene Harrisonburg in partnership with Sunshine Ministries.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast of Hope Talks. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe for updates and the latest episodes. Also, if you're in the Harrisonburg-Rockingham County area, we invite you to listen on the radio each Sunday at noon on 1470 AM or 102.1 FM WBTX.